frankly, we talk the chemicals because, people just don't see this, the level of brutality, the level of viciousness. But when they drop barrel bombs and bombs of any kind right on top of a civilian population, that's the worst thing. I've never seen anything like it. And frankly, Putin is backing a person that's truly an evil person. And I think it's very bad for Russia. I think it's very bad for mankind. It's very bad for this world.
The White House is accusing Russia of trying to cover up the Syrian government's role in last week's deadly chemical weapons attack. The Trump administration says declassified intelligence shows the chemical agent sarin was delivered by a Syrian regime aircraft. Meanwhile, President Trump is bolstering the U.S. role in one of Putin's most hated alliances. Today, the president is scheduled to meet with the Secretary General of NATO at the White House. Yesterday, Trump signed a treaty allowing the entry of Montenegro into the Mutual Defense Pact, which would expand its reach in Eastern Europe. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is warning Russia in no uncertain terms about its ties to Syria, saying the Assad regime was, quote, coming to an end. He said Russia is at risk of losing its relevance in the Middle East by continuing to support the dictatorship. Still, the new Secretary of State's inexperience is showing just a bit. He reportedly said to a group of top diplomats at Tuesday's G7 meeting in Italy, quote, "Why should U.S. taxpayers be interested in Ukraine?" That's according to France's foreign minister.
Let's bring in right now a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Democratic Whip Dick Durbin of Illinois. Senator, first of all, congratulations, Cubs, doing very well, 5-2. Good start to the season. And it seems as if, as David Ignatius and the Washington Post and others are saying, there is starting to see beginning to be a shift in America's foreign policy, perhaps because of Mattis and McMaster's growing influence with the president. How important is it that we expanded NATO yesterday?
I think it's absolutely essential, and Ukraine is the exhibit A of why it is essential that the countries of Europe, Poland, the Baltics, and Ukraine know that the United States is committed to NATO. That's the only way to stop Putin's adventurism in this situation. And yes, I agree with David Ignatius. What you're seeing is a moderation of the views of Donald Trump, at least in his White House foreign policy, that differ from what we heard on the campaign trail. On the campaign trail, he didn't back off an inch. He started off his presidency with obsolete
but now he's moving more, as Ignatius said, moving more towards China in a way that we can deal with China. And they're all talking pretty tough on Russia.
Yes, what a change. What a dramatic change in such a short period of time. But think about a week ago, here's Secretary of State Tillerson saying, well, let the Syrian people decide if Assad has a future. Within 7 days, we're attacking them. So there is a transition taking place. You have identified Jared Kushner as one of the elements of that transition. I think that's true. From what I've heard. And it's an indication that they're moving toward what used to be the center stripe, the mainstream on foreign policy.
Yeah, and obviously, General McMaster, General Mattis, just obviously having really
Joe, I voted for more generals than I ever dreamed I would.
Isn't it?
Kid growing up in the 60s.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't it funny? We all grew up. I say this to Mike all the time. We all grow up, when you think about generals around a president, you go back to JFK and all the warmongers that he had around him, the people that he didn't trust. And now you actually have, maybe it's the 15 years of war. Generals is the moderating influence.
And if you saw Mattis yesterday, what a great, solid performance.
Right.
He wasn't intimidated by the audience. He was playing the press, saying, maybe it's your turn to ask a question, and giving solid answers like a man who has seen combat and watched people die. Making life and death decisions. Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
That sort of person is that close to the president. That's the thing most of us fear the most. It's 3 in the morning. He takes a nap between tweets. There's a knock on the door. You got 5 minutes to make a life or death decision. Who does he call?
I think he's got a team around him because of what's happened in Syria that he's actually spending time with that actually adds value to this president in a big way.
No question. Look what McMaster's doing with the
I was going to say, think about the trade-up.
Trump made these choices.
Mike, think about the trade-up with the National Security Council. We went from General Flynn to General McMaster. We went from KT McFarland to Dina Powell.
You want someone opposed to war? Go to the Pentagon. Talk to people like General Mattis, General McMaster. Read McMaster's book, Dereliction of Duty, which outlines the incredible flaws and human failures and cowardice at the command level in the 1960s in Vietnam.
And you talk to the military, young military, aspiring leaders. McMaster's a hero. He's a person who spoke up and talked about the errors of foreign policy and how they were played out in military decisions.
So, Senator, when you hear Rex Tillerson say the Assad era is coming to an end, as he did yesterday, what do you hear in that? Because that can happen a few different ways. It can happen from the Syrian people somehow. It can happen from Russia leaning on him and convincing him to leave power. I don't see any indication or incentive for them to do that. Or it can come from a Western coalition led by the United States removing him from power. What does that mean to you?
I think back to 4 years ago. I'm home in Springfield, Illinois. It's Sunday night, and I get a phone call from President Obama. Whoa, what's up, President? Well, we see some chemical weapons in Syria. I want to come to Congress and ask you, as a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, to vote for a resolution to give me authority to do something about it, which I did. And a number of Republicans joined us, Corker, McCain, Graham. Then it came to the General Congress, and they said, what's next? After this 60-day effort to discourage Assad from chemical weapons. And they backed off. Both Democrats and Republicans backed off, and that was the end of the red line as far as the president was concerned. So I asked the question, what follows 60 missiles, whatever?
Right.
What's next?
Well, that's my question. What is that? How is Assad removed from power ultimately? In
23 of us voted no on that Iraq resolution to go to war. We asked that question.
Would you have voted no on him firing the missiles Thursday night?
No. I really believe, my view is this. When it comes to crimes against humanity, that is in the national interest of the United States of America.
And I don't ask this, I'm not pushing you on this next question. This is more of a general question, though, for everybody that's been talking since last Thursday night. When we ask, what's next? What's next? What's next? A very wise question to ask, but if they're saying our policy's not changing, we're not invading Syria, isn't perhaps that the wrong question on what's next? What are you going to do? Is it just going to be a missile strike when maybe a focused missile strike that General Mattis suggested to the president, maybe that's what the moment called for, and maybe there is not a next until he crosses another red line?
I think that's, you might put your finger on it. I'm not sure that they had a plot that said this is step one.
Right.
What they did was assert this president is willing to use force. That was the statement. Against a dictator using weapons that are inexcusable when it comes to conflict.
All right, here's John Meacham.
Senator, you were just talking about being surprised that you voted for as many generals as you did. And one of the reasons I think that a lot of these generals are as buttoned down as they are is because of Vietnam. It's the Colin Powell model. We're now in the 16th year of war in Afghanistan, the 14th year, almost to the month, in Iraq. What do you think the next generation of generals will be learning from these wars that are the longest in our history?
Well, that's a good and important question, and I think the frustration of Vietnam, with all the lives that were lost and all the money spent and the division within the United States, look at what's happening in Afghanistan today. I voted for that war. We were going after the people responsible for the terrible tragedy of 9/11, and yet you look back on it now and you say, where are we today in terms of the stability and future of Afghanistan? We still can't field an army in Afghanistan to execute basic peacekeeping, stop the advance of the Taliban and other terrorist forces. So I would say there's still a level of frustration. The greatest military power in the world has its limits, and people have to understand when we say we're a great nuclear power, it doesn't mean much when you're dealing with roadside bombs.
John, all right, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you being here.
Good to be with you.
We're going to
Thanks,
Mick
Senator.
Mulvaney in just a minute. Dick Durbin, thank you very much today.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.